Welcome everyone. I think I know most people on the line tonight. In case you don't know who I am, my name's Grant Baker. I'm the Director of Infrastructure Services here at Blaney Shire. And I've been looking after this project since its inception last year. Obviously, there's been a considerable amount of time since we last met back in September, but that was a very constructive meeting, which provided some great feedback for our consultants. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We'll keep everybody on mute if we could, just so that we don't get any background noise and so forth. And then if you'd like to put your hand up during the presentation or at the end, and certainly please use the chat function. We'll monitor that as well to put questions through to the guys at Place Design. If I could just recognise a couple of our councillors who are in attendance tonight, Councillor Bruce Reynolds and Councillor Craig Goswich. Don't think anybody else is there. No, they're not. And our General Manager, obviously, Rebecca Ryan. If I could firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet tonight, the Wiradjuri people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. And I extend that respect to the any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. I'd like to just formally recognise the apology of our Mayor, Councillor Ferguson, who unfortunately has to attend another meeting tonight, and the President of the Millthorpe Village Association, Nick Agnosteris. Nick may join us, but I know he's busy out in the paddocks today. I'll hand over to our consultants from Place Design Group, Nick Ison and Matt Drury, who've been working on this project for us, and allow them to present an update to the strategy that we've been working on, and then we'll take the opportunity, obviously, for comments and questions. So, hand over to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Evening, everyone. My name is Nick Ison. I'm Director of Place Design Group, and I've got Matthew Drury here, who's the Project Manager and Senior Landscape Architect at Place Design Group. Thank you for everyone's feedback to date on the analysis drawings and high-level concepts that we presented last time. It's fantastic to work with a community that shares such passion as we do for community and precincts, and especially towns like Millthorpe. What we'll do this evening is talk through some of the feedback that we received and how we've incorporated into updated concept designs, and then we're happy to answer any questions at the end of the session. So I'll pass you on to Matt Drury, who will take you through the designs, and we'll share our screen on this end.
All right, hi everyone. I'm just going to share screen. All right, can everyone see that there? All right, so I'm going to talk us through the concept design update for the Millthorpe Village Centre. The first half will be a quick recap of where we got up to previously, and where we got to September, end of last year, and the community consultation session. Then I'll talk through the feedback we received and how we've adjusted the plans and updated it. So at the end, we'll go through any questions that arise, and yeah, happy to talk through it afterwards. Cut off there. So to start off with, just thought we'd recap on our overall design vision for the village centre. So we always like to put together a brief snapshot, a sentence or two that helps explain what we're trying to achieve for this project. So for Millthorpe, we wanted to create an activated village centre and vibrant streetscape, which really emphasises the town's character and heritage while supporting local businesses and improving the pedestrian experience. So around that, we've got our key principles that we really wanted to embed in the design. So an inclusive destination, emphasising the local landscape, reconsolidating the centre, supporting local businesses, environmental considerations, heritage and the sense of place, designing for festivals and events, offering passive recreation, and improving pedestrian connectivity and safety. There's a couple of strategic documents that we took on board as we were undertaking this process. So the village community plan, as well as the Blaney active transportation strategy that was done in 2016. Jumping ahead, we after our site visits, we put together a series of analysis diagrams just to help us explain what we were seeing on site and look at the opportunities and constraints and where we can add value to this pretty amazing and historic town centre. So a couple of images here, just looking at the materials and the character of the site. And then we undertook a few image overlays that we like to do when working on any project. And apologies if this was covered previously and you've seen this before. But we felt like it's important just to quickly cap that there's a real opportunity of taking advantage of the heritage nature of the site. So making sure that the verandas, the heritage architecture and the skyline is retained and emphasised in whatever we do in the project. So really taking advantage of those wide awnings, especially for outdoor dining and rest areas, and incorporating as much of that heritage bluestone that's on site currently as we can. And also making sure that we're incorporating accessible principles, so ensuring that our curves are brought to a level that's a little bit more manageable, because we've got some deep steps. Looking at the corner of Park and Victoria, again, we want to make sure that anything we do really emphasises the heritage nature of the site, but how we can add to that. So looking at the corner, the intersection here with blisters and planting, opportunity to extend and improve the traffic conditions around this corner, as the crest at Park Street, and how we can get vehicles and pedestrians down into Victoria, down into the centre in a manner that's safe and really gives a bit of a sense of arrival to the town. Looking a bit further south now to the Station Plaza, the key takeaway from this image overlay is that we want to maintain those really strong views all the way through to the train station. There's an image right at the start of our package that shows the train station, and it really does maintain that heritage character from the 1800s. So it's pretty key that we keep that open and strong. But also an opportunity how we can utilise the verge next to the pub to create a bit more outdoor dining, increase pedestrian movement through there, and formalise this plaza a little bit more. So the community consult feedback summary here is a quick snapshot of what was undertaken in May last year. So this was the original consultation survey that went out online, and we received a great amount of feedback, and so this is just a quick snapshot. So what we love most about the village centre, obviously the atmosphere, the heritage of the site, its authenticity, its uniqueness, and whatever we do, we want to make sure that comes through. So here's a few snapshots of the feedback that we received, but I'll just jump ahead to our most recent survey. So following Nick's presentation in September last year, the community were invited to attend to provide feedback on the concept package that was put together, and we received over 130 responses. So taking all that data and information and insights, we compiled that down to a couple of really key points that stood out to us. So the first one was that 65% of the community preferred there was no change to the traffic direction along either Victoria or Pym streets. So we've kept the current layout of the streets, but how we've embellished that we'll go through in a bit more detail in the following slides. So the community were committed to maintaining the village feel, and while it was recognised tourists are important to the town, there are many residents and businesses at the centre who really need easy access maintained. Original features of the streets, so verandas, the cobblestones and bluestone curbing and guttering were priority, and that came up multiple times in the feedback. The recommendation that heavy vehicles and through traffic would be diverted. Parking, including angled parking and park and walk options, was something that came up a few times. Reducing traffic speed with a variety of calming devices, providing better access for those less able, so providing more universal access, undergrounding the existing power network and including temporary bollards for events along Pym Street and the beautification of Pym Street. And then the discussion of parklets and the inclusion was very positive, but without a net loss of parking spaces. So taking all that feedback on board, we distilled the information into 5 key themes that really stood out to us. So number 1 was the character and the heritage. So, and the key objective we came from that was to maintain the village feel and its quirky character and historic charm. Taking a breakdown of that, we then took that into strategic actions, which we'll go to in a bit further detail when we have the plans up, just so it's easier to talk to and talk through as we're going. So number 2, pedestrian safety, to slow traffic down and create a sense of pedestrian ownership on the streets of the village centre. So trying to give the local walker, pedestrians, a bit more ownership of the centre of town. And so that was something that we thought was really important to the heritage and to help enliven the town. Number 3, accessibility and wayfinding. So the objective under this one was to promote the connectivity of the village for less able people, as well as signage for holiday visitors on where to park and where to walk. So this includes, creating universally accessible ramps, improving accessibility where we can, but also about people that may not be familiar with the area and how they can move through the town centre. The function and the workability, so ensuring we're supporting the working nature of the village. Community value is number 5, and to value the street as open space infrastructure, so supporting that social interaction, really emphasising the heritage and the identity of the place, as well as the businesses. So we want to make sure that everything we do is, with community in mind. Taking all that on board, we developed our concept master plan that looked at how we can implement those key thinkings and key feedback. We've also got a couple of detail plans that I'll go through in more detail. But at this higher level, the main one that sticks out as you first see the plan is that blue zone right through the centre. So this is highlighted as a high pedestrian activity area. So this looks at reducing the speed limit down Victoria and Pym Street to 30 kilometres an hour to help promote that walkability and sense of ownership of the pedestrian. We've also looked at incorporating including advanced warning lights at the school crossing at Park Street, so opposite the Millthorpe Public School. We've incorporated heavy vehicle and through traffic being diverted along Glenorrey Road. So this would be undertaken with some signage before big trucks can come into the centre of town and get lost and get stuck. We want to make sure there's a clear direct route for those heavy vehicles around the historic and smaller town centre. And including with that 30 kilometre/hour high pedestrian activity zone is the upgrading of intersections with planted corners, blisters and accessible crossing points. So really creating a sense of arrival as we're coming to Victoria Street, but also sort of these entrance points. And we'll look at that in a little bit further detail in the blow up, but how they would temporary temporary bollards in event situations. A couple of other key elements that we investigated was the idea of a park and walk strategy. So including signage at the local bowling club, the 3.1 here, as well as Redmond Oval and the railway station, and then providing signage and wayfinding for visitors to come into the town centre. We know in busy situations, busy periods, that there can be a lot of trouble finding a park, especially with big events. So providing that extra parking and directing people to walk into the town centre, that's a great opportunity. In addition to that, signage and wayfinding, we looked at the idea of, well, the signage of promoting where caravans and trailers can park, clear directional spots to where they can find a spot, just so that we're not getting caravans trying to do 3-point turns within town. And then also clear signage to public toilets at Redmond Oval and Railway Station. So currently we have an upgraded or soon to be upgraded bathroom at the train station. And we have facilities at Redmond Oval. So providing signage to those spots will help address some of those concerns that came out of the most recent community consultation. We've also looked at formalising some of that parking. So on Victoria Street, you'll see in the preceding plans, we looked at some reverse angle parking and some formalised parking. And I'll show you that on the next slide. So looking at this blow up here, our very first dot point, 1.1 under character and heritage, was the restoration of the original features of the streetscape. So this was something that was really important. Obviously that came out multiple times during the community consultation. And this also included the bluestone guttering. So undertaking an audit of the condition of all the bluestone guttering throughout town, removing cement sections, repointing, replacing, and refurbishing the bluestone guttering throughout. So you'll see on our plans, we've got these blue lines on our curb lines. So where we've got the dark blue, we're indicating a proposed bluestone curbing, and where we've got the light blue is a restoration of the existing. So in places, we've got quite a bit down through the really heart of the village centre, but we want to make sure that that's extended and that it's continuous throughout Millthorpe and really creates that heritage style throughout. We've looked at incorporating additional heritage style footpath seating right in the village centre. So being able to stop, take a break, take in the local village atmosphere would be really, really important. 1.3, relocating the existing power network underground. This will be along Pym Street. And really emphasising those verandas, as we mentioned earlier. It's key to the heritage and the character of the site. So to remove some unsightly power poles would definitely be advantageous. As I mentioned before, we've looked at introduction of a 30-kilometre pedestrian activity zone, high activity zone, and improved line markings, as well as traffic calming devices. So as you come into town, we'd look at sort of narrowing the corners in a few places and look at how we can incorporate a bit more planting. This does two things. It makes it a little bit safer for pedestrians to cross at these points, as they're not running across a wider street, but also helps to slow down traffic as they've got to navigate a bit more, just a little bit more of a tighter turn than sort of cutting the corner. Under number 3, accessibility and wayfinding, we've looked at improving walkways, footpath services, and installing new pram ramps. So this would involve a bit of detailed design as we go into the next stages to understand some of those levels and how we can reduce some of those really deep gutters where possible and ensure we're getting universal access throughout. Upgraded heritage interpretation and wayfinding signage. As I mentioned before, a couple of different uses for those signs, and we've got a few precedents at the end of the package that we can share some thoughts on what that might look like. Number 3.3, installing reverse angled parking on Victoria Street. So up here between Park and Pym Street. We've included this indicatively as we believe there's definitely space there to get reverse angle parking included. Victoria Street is a very wide street. We may be able to get it on both sides of the street. However, at this stage, we've just shown on the one until we get into that detail and confirm with the traffic consultant and start working out the nitty gritty. We felt like there's a great opportunity to increase the amount of parking, but also be able to get a few more street trees and bring the curb line out into the road a little bit more, because it is quite a wide space along Victoria Street. Then moving down the list, raised threshold for more level access across deep curves, as I mentioned before. Maintaining clear zones along Pym Street to ensure deliveries and parking for the local residents and businesses. The potential for a rollover curb on the intersection of Victoria and Park Street. Being at the crest of the hill, we felt like this would be a good opportunity to slow down a bit of traffic as they come down Victoria Street before they hit that 30 kilometre zone. But being rollover as well, as we know, the large trucks and vehicles also use Park Street. Again, that's subject to Transport for New South Wales and review with the traffic consultant. Just something we wanted to raise and to put forward. And then finally, for this detail plan, 5.1, the installation of temporary bollards at key points along Pym Street. So this would be a fantastic opportunity to temporarily close Pym Street for community festivals and markets and other special events. This is already being undertaken, but with the upgrade and the beautification of Pym Street, that infrastructure, those temporary bollards, and potentially power outlets with the undergrounding of the power lines could really make those events pop and help with the organisation and the planning. So here's a quick cross section through Victoria Street. As we mentioned, parking space on the northern side, currently shown as parallel, but this could be angled depending on further traffic studies, and an angled park along the southern side. Moving a bit further down now to the railway station and Railway Place. We, again, number one of our list, upgrading the bluestone curbing and the heritage elements of the site. So as I mentioned before, the dark blue represents the proposed bluestone curbing, whereas the light blue is the restoration of existing bluestone curbing. So we're really tying in and filling in the gaps, essentially, that heritage element. Again, the introduction of the 30-kilometre pedestrian zone, but also with that, these traffic calming measures at thresholds to help indicate that you're entering a new speed zone, and also helps to reduce some of the road width for pedestrians, a little bit more accessible, a little bit more pedestrian friendly, and of course getting a bit more greenery into those intersections so cars can't cut the corner. As we kind of move down the list here on the left-hand side, the park and walk signage, again, with the bowling green and the car park to the railway station, an opportunity to include signage, the park and walk for park, also for amenities. So as mentioned, clear sign to the public toilets at the railway station. Looking at the design in a bit more detail around the station plaza, we're proposing 5.3 here that the station plaza becomes a shared zone. There's a low amount of traffic volume, and there is people walking through this area up to the station. So we felt like it's a good opportunity to introduce even a slower speed limit. And this would tie in to the parking along the southern side, formalising that. At the moment, it's a little bit unsure of the exact way to park. So formalising that parking, but this shared zone would also tie into 5.2 located here, which we're proposing as a temporary parklet concept. So this is a little outdoor dining area that will be built into the road reserve and provide an outdoor dining experience for the pub. At the moment, tables and chairs really sit across the footpath, and being able to provide sort of a bit more of a designated zone with a bit more, space, I think would be a great opportunity for people to come out and enjoy a drink outside in the sunshine, and while being close to the station plaza and close to the pub. So we've got a couple of precedent images here that help explain what I've been sort of talking on about. Oh, sorry, before we get onto that, we have a section here that cuts right through the station plaza. So this temporary parklet would take up the space of a few car spaces into the road reserve. However, that loss of parking we feel would be taken up or compensated on the opposite side with more formalised line markings. So it's a bit more clear about how that would work. Precedent imagery. So we've put together a kind of a look and feel of a few examples of materials of how this might look. On the top left here, we have what we've been talking about, these sort of blisters, how we might bring pedestrians a little bit closer into the road reserve, so it's a lesser distance to walk, but also bring some greenery in around those corners. And we've also got a couple of images here of bollards, how we might see those working as temporary, but sort of the heritage style bollard that would only come out in special events, special occasions. And then a couple of images of the parklet concept that we're looking at. So as I mentioned, these are outdoor dining spaces, temporary in nature, just to allow a little bit more space for diners and allow a bit more thoroughfare along the footpath outside the pub. Just a great opportunity to get outside and to enjoy the sun in summer. And then finally, we've included a series of precedent images for heritage interpretation and wayfinding. So this could include, as I mentioned, the park and walk, directions to the toilets, other key locations within town centre. But it's also a really good opportunity to tell the story of Millthorpe. Visitors from afar to understand, a little bit more about the heritage and history of the site, and that could be weaved into this sort of signage strategy throughout town. So this was a couple of images there to help evoke some thoughts and some ideas. We've included a few appendices. This is the data from our previous community consultation session, which can be looked at maybe after the session. But I'll wrap it up there. If there's any questions, let us know. Please fire away.
Thanks, Matt. Before people just start firing away, if I could just ask you, there we go. If I could just ask, I think it just popped up quickly in the chat. I'll just adjust my screen. Mary Elizabeth, the Millthorpe Museum needs to be involved in any new or replacement interpretation. You're referring to the signage there, are you?
Yes, I know they've expressed interest in being involved in that.
Okay. Thanks for that. We'll certainly take note of that. It's always good to have those sorts of resources.
Yeah, definitely. The resource centre.
If anybody else has got any questions, if they can either put them in the chat or if you just want to put your hand up. Oh, there we go. Who was that? Councillor Reynolds, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Grant. One thing with the interpretive signs, looking there, that the ones that you showed up seem to be very obtrusive. something I've noticed in Orange, they have a totally different style that sort of bends over. And so hopefully when you're looking to try and have the least impact, but still be able to, use an interpretive sign. So that was just something I noted then, that the signs were really in your face and may actually harm the character and the heritage of the village if those signs, and I know they're only indicative signs, but something to keep a mind on. Also something that, and you've sort of touched on it, Montgomery Street, really bad erosion there, which comes off Pym going north. So hopefully, and I don't know whether you looked at Bluestone sort of curve and guttering, but something needs to be done up Montgomery on the eastern side.
No, that's great feedback. Yeah, no, we can definitely incorporate, that curbing into this master plan and make sure it continues up Montgomery. And your point about the signage as well. Yeah, definitely. We can look at something a little bit subtle, a little bit more subtle. Yeah, we sort of put those images out there to get the feedback and some responses. So no, that's really great.
Anything that we develop for the town centre will be totally unique and specific for the environments, and we'll be totally sympathetic to what's already there to make sure we're respecting, all the values from that architecture and the character that's already there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. I'll go to the chat now and I'll just start to go through those comments and questions there for you. Helen says signage to the toilets that are 300 metres away at the oval of the railway does not solve the problem. If there is one thing we need in the centre of town at the intersection of Pym and Victoria, it's public toilets. Helen, that's something that certainly hasn't gone unnoticed by council, by staff and councillors, and we have worked to try and find solutions to that. So it's still there. It's not something that's missed. Rachel has asked what GVM will define heavy vehicles for diversion. Look, we have already put in place a 10-tonne limit through Victoria Street to try and control that. That was approved by council. It went through traffic committee and through council. I would suggest at this point in time that's a sort of a watching brief, and we will we can put in traffic counters again to monitor that. That can provide us with information on what size vehicles may still be doing that or going through there, but it doesn't limit the ability for somebody who needs a delivery truck, for example, into either a business or a home within that zone to do that. The Helen's then said she loves the replacement of the Bluestone. Mary Elizabeth says, what are the formal mechanisms for further feedback to this iteration of the proposal beyond this meeting? I might get to that at the end if I can, Mary Elizabeth. Rachel says, why not extend the 30 zone east of Park Street past the school and west to the railway bridge to slow through traffic? Look, I'm happy to take that one on notice. Speed zones are something that are assessed and authorised via Transport for New South Wales. So we can take that on notice and talk to them about that. The 30 zone past the school, I'm just putting it out there, may have a complication because of the 40 zone for the school, which is sort of legislated, that sort of thing. But happy to take that on notice and we can put that to transport. I'll just scribble that down so I don't forget. Peter has then said, will a drive over roundabout calm heavy traffic or will the truck simply drive over it? Look, Peter, that's a truck driver's decision. We couldn't determine whether they would or wouldn't. I can say, though, that Transport have already asked their engineering staff to look at some ideas on what a roundabout, what sort of a solution may work. But that's certainly not something we've received any response or further advice on at this point in time. Helen's then asked or said, it's not clear to me where the trucks will be diverted through. The intention really was to address the diversion of trucks that may have come from the Victoria and Bathurst direction along Victoria Road, and probably those that would have come from the Orange direction as well down Park Street, rather than them dropping into the village in Victoria Street, they'd be directed across the railway line to turn right into Glenorrey Road. And we're already looking at some early design work on what Glenorrey Road might look like into the future, and the intersection at the bottom of the hill where it intersects with Forest Reefs Road or Cadia Street, sorry. And Mark has then asked, would it be possible to extend the underground power lines all the way to the railway station to allow for the reconstruction of the railway hotel veranda by the owners? The idea of undergrounding the power is obviously a fantastic one, and unfortunately very, very expensive. So that would come down to funding. But the intent of extending it down to the railway station to once again, I'll say, open up that visual down Pym Street to the railway station, and not have that obtrusive aspect of the power lines, which then offers the opportunity for the owner of the pub to reinstate the veranda, which in the presentation you will have seen an early photo when it used to have a veranda on it, and it's a magnificent building with its veranda and really looks lost without it. So that'd be certainly an objective of the undergrounding of the power. Okay, just find where I am again. So racing through. Okay. Rachel has said Park Street is a B-double route. Yes, which needs to be taken into account, certainly. Also, when you're narrowing up Victoria Street on the eastern side, there are cattle trucks that go through there to turn left to CTLX. This still needs to be able to happen. Rachel, could I ask you to just elaborate upon that? I'm just not quite sure what you mean. Are those the vehicles that are
just looking at where you're where you're talking about putting blisters out and things like that on Park Street, and you've got Victoria Street that runs through there. There's cattle trucks that are going to run from, like, on Victoria Road, and they're not, they're not semis, but they're still large enough trucks, and they'll get to the post office and they'll turn left to go down to the CTLX sale yards. So if you narrow that intersection up a huge amount, that's going to make that difficult for larger vehicles to turn onto Park Street. So it just needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, thank you. Take that on notice. We haven't really looked, I'm just going back through we haven't proposed any narrowing so much of that side of the intersection. And I'm certainly aware of that from previous approaches or applications for B-double access in past up Victoria Road. So certainly aware of the challenges of that intersection. So we'll take that on note, though. Richard then asked, will the potential change of use of the corner store affect our plans if it becomes a small supermarket and deliveries and that? I might just ask, I think Mark Dicker, our Director of Planning, is online. Mark, would you be able to jump in and provide any update with regards to the corner store? I'm not sure where things are at.
Hey Grant, so and everyone else, so we've given preliminary advice, and my understanding is, Grant, we'd previously spoken about that the vehicle length is actually already limited by the weight limit currently in place through the village. So my understanding was, and I haven't seen the pre-development advice given to the new owners, I believe, is that a DA is not required to change that building from its current use to a general, like to a small supermarket, unless liquor was added. So I don't think that there would be a significant impact from this plan on that specific site.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark. Genevieve's just made the observation, thanks us for listening and taking on board the community feedback, and this feels much better than the earlier proposal. Thanks for that, Genevieve. Peter has said the underground power feed in Wentworth Falls terminates at the property boundary with a large pole and defeats the purpose. Is the plan to extend underground directly to property power boards? Peter, I'd have to take that on notice. That's a very interesting point. I've certainly been to Wentworth Falls a number of times, but I hadn't taken note of the of that situation. I'm aware of it in other places where, yes, it's underground and then for some reason it pops out of the ground, almost like at a private pole, if you like, before it then services the property. So that'd be something that'd have to be looked into at the time of detailed design for such a proposal. So, but thank you for pointing that out. Helen's made the observation about loving the power lines being undergrounded. Richard has said pedestrian safety at the corner of Elliott Street and Victoria Street. It's an awkward intersection. Also, the ugly bus stop at this intersection adjacent to the village green, can it be upgraded or relocated so it's not so visible at the end of Victoria Street? And can the village green be visually opened up to connect it to the village centre? Just going through that, Richard, certainly pedestrian safety at the corner at that intersection is something that we're aware of. There has been reports go to Traffic Committee in the past with regards to it, and it will need certainly need a detailed design. The concept plan provided by Place Design is indicative really of something, but what the final solution is would require obviously the detailed design and a look at it from a road safety point of view. So, but thank you for noting that. I won't draw any comment on the bus stop. Many people would be very wedded to that bus stop. Happy for that to come up later on. I'll throw over to Matt and Nick with regards to the village green. So that being Mill Green at the intersection of Elliott Street and Victoria Street. There's if you zoom in there, that's right, roughly where your cursor was. That area has been progressively enhanced with plantings, and it's almost like a mini botanical garden, if you like, with some seating and so forth. It's a very passive space. Just wonder whether you guys have got any comments.
We can definitely, have a look at incorporating a little bit more of that. So, sorry, just to clarify, are we right on the intersection? Oh, this.
That's right. Yeah, and I think visually at the moment, it's the view to it, the vista to it from along Victoria Street is probably blocked by the current old school bus stop shelter. And I think that when we look at the intersection design and we perhaps talk to school bus operators, is there actually a need for it? I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that. That'd be something we'd have to investigate at the time. So, and I'm thinking that structure, if that was removed, then you're going to see the greenery of the park. Richard, I don't know whether you wanted to elaborate on that a bit.
Only that it's a nice green space which can be used by people who are walking around the village, and at the moment it is disconnected, and I think a lot of people wander past because they don't know what it is and they can't see a way into it, and so I think it needs to, and it's right there at the end of Victoria Street. It has the opportunity to provide a green outlook at the end of the street, and I think at the moment it's just being underutilized, and there's always a risk that when it's underutilized that it won't be maintained as well as it could be, because it's not valued. So that's all I was saying. Yep.
That's really good feedback, and I think it's certainly something that we'd look to incorporate in further detail and certainly connect to, because obviously open space like that and green areas are just, you know, so valuable to character in these town centres.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, look to incorporate that into the plan.
Thanks for that, Richard. Penny, has consideration been given to formal line marking around the school precinct and pharmacy area? I'll just ask Penny if she could elaborate upon that.
Hi, Grant. My question is around the road marking, so that it's really clear about how many vehicles can park in areas along Victoria Road near the school and also opposite the pharmacy, and then also up by the police station and museum.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, look, as designs are done and so forth, we can certainly do that. We have recently done that here in Blaney on Carcoar Street when we redeveloped Carcoar Street. Outside King George Oval, we actually delineated the car parking to help address that and maximise the opportunity for parking spaces. Thank you. Okay, Rachel, how do you define through traffic? If I'm 5 minutes east of Millthorpe and want to drive through to Forest Street, does that make me through traffic and have to drive down Glenorrey Road? Look, Rachel, the idea of that is to direct traffic that would otherwise pass through the village. If we can direct them around Glenorrey Road, then great. But as a local, it's more than likely and recognised that you're going to drive through the village. You're going to be willing to sort of spend that 30 seconds extra or 1 minute extra, whatever it is, to drive in that slower zone through the village. So, yeah, it's not something that's a regulated thing. It's just a thing to try and make the village more inviting to pedestrians and so forth. Helen has said, the intersection of Park and Victoria, as our cars come in from Blaney and turn left down Victoria, multiple cars hit the curb already in an attempt to cut the curb. Wow, okay. I can see why. I think I've got an idea why. Not sure how you stop or fix this, but it already happens multiple times. Helen, I'm thinking, looking at the aerial imagery, I'm thinking that's probably because of the sharp point of the curb once it sweeps around into Victoria Street. Only a suggestion though. Otherwise, it's about getting the curb build outs that we're talking about is about trying to slow traffic up. Unfortunately, sometimes driver behaviour, they just want to go fast anyway, and we're trying to put things in place that make it safer for people, whether they be motorists seeking to park in the village, people that don't know where they're going, or pedestrians. So, yeah, that's a driver behaviour thing, a lot of that. And
just if you're aware of it in the design, I don't know what you do about it, because I get what it is, but if you're aware of it. Yeah.
Look, when we do these designs, our software allows us to overlay swept turning paths of different vehicles, so we can certainly look at that. And you use those generally for what you do is you lay over the largest design vehicle that you would expect to utilise the area. So in this instance, it's going to be something which would be a rigid type truck with a 10-tonne type weight limit at the moment. That'd be what we'd throw over any design to see whether it works, because obviously we don't want to restrict that ability.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And then Helen just said that she supports Richard's idea about making a heritage and the heritage bus stop and linking Mill Green to the rest of the village. Richard, I see you indicated proposed larger street trees. Please, can we have larger, useful shade trees and not continue to the existing crab apple trees? Richard, certainly acknowledge that. It's a bit of a vexed question for us because you go for larger shade trees and then we get other issues crop up from the community about whether it be leaf deposition or other things. The crabapple trees have tended to be a tree of choice for council because they're that sort of small to medium-sized tree and they don't tend to encroach into power lines. So that's been one of the reasons we've gone with them in the past. But look, if we've undergrounded the power, then great. We can look at other options. And then Rachel said, are clear zones in Pym Street likely to be 7 days a week or just Friday to Sunday when it is busy? Look, Rachel, certainly no decision on anything with regards to that. That would be something that would be if we're starting to progress down that route, that would be an engagement type thing with the businesses to make sure they're still able to service their business on the days that they do receive deliveries. Some places are very regimented in the days that they do get deliveries and that. So I couldn't say it'll be every day of the week at all, and I wouldn't anticipate that either. Okay. I've got to all of those, all that was in the chat. Helen, I noticed you've got your hand up still. I'm not sure if that was for something else.
No, it was for something else, but just I remember somebody talking about having, I'm not sure what you call it, but a raised bit of road back on Park Street, somewhere back towards the end of Rosebank and then at the other end of the school. So somewhere along Redmond Oval there. So instead of a roundabout, or in the idea of trying to slow traffic, and I don't know all the problems with it, so it may not be a good idea, but to actually have effectively a raised bit of road that slows people down at both ends of Park Street, wherever it's appropriate to have it. It could be a pedestrian crossing as well or something, but so that it's obvious, and the actual, because it's raised, cars going at 100 k's at night, it would be better for them to slow down. Yeah. I don't know whether you've looked at something like that, but I remember someone suggesting it and I thought, oh, would that work?
Look, it certainly would. It comes with its cons as well, because it then results in additional traffic noise, especially on somewhere like Park Street, where you'd have your stock trucks. Having them rattle over one of those would be a problem. And my suspicion is that Transport wouldn't approve it because that Park Street, because it's the state network, they wouldn't approve it. It's certainly a solution on other local roads, because then you've got the footpath on grade rather than having to drop down through a curve and gutter and so forth. So it is a successful treatment on local roads, but I don't suspect it would be supported by Transport on the state network.
Yeah.
Okay. Richard, you got your hand up?
I think when I was speaking to Helen once before, I mentioned raising the intersection of Pym and Victoria Street. So where we've got that bluestone, the existing bluestone curb, and then we've also got the drainage issues on the northern side, and we've also got pedestrians trying to cross there, and vehicles going too fast. I did wonder whether, if you raise that intersection, whether you might be able to deal with pedestrian access over bluestone curbs and drainage, and also speed of vehicles, just by raising that intersection there, and whether that might actually do lots of jobs all at once. But anyway, that was just a thought.
Thanks, Richard. Yes, I do remember that. I recall in our traffic committee a couple of years ago, the issue was raised about speeding in Victoria Street. And when we did the traffic analysis there through the centre of the village, we actually what you do is you determine what the maximum speed 85% of the vehicles are doing as your base, and 85% of the vehicles were doing, I think it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Reynolds, I think it was in the order of about 59, 60 kilometres an hour. And Transport for New South Wales actually said, well, look, based on that, it's currently a 50 zone. You wouldn't really achieve anything by putting in other treatments. So whilst we're now talking about reducing this to a 30 zone, and I must say that was something that came as a surprise to us a year and a half ago when we first started talking to Transport about this, because I believe the first 30 zone is actually only in the last month or two been put in place in Maruya down on the south coast. 40 zones used to be the idea for a high pedestrian area, but now there seems to be a lot of support within Transport and the Centre for Road Safety for 30 zones. So 30 zones, obviously a different question to a 40. Okay.
Just to back up Grant, and I actually thought it was lower than the high 50s, Grant. I thought it was actually in the high 40s. So, but again, I stand to be corrected, but there wasn't the speeding issue that we potentially thought was there. A couple of questions though. If we were to look at something like in Orange, they've done Matthews Avenue and Anson Street, which right at the school at Bletchington School there, which I find is quite effective. It does seem to slow everyone down. But the biggest concern on the other side is with the Bluestone, and the Bluestone sort of, that comes onto the road, as in how you could manage that without losing that character of the Bluestone coming down Victoria Street across Pym Street. So, but anyway, just something to consider. But I do see where Richard's coming from, particularly with, Pym, Montgomery and Victoria Street. If something like in Matthews Avenue and Anson Street was implemented, it might slow further. But we don't have the data, as Grant was saying, that there is excessive speeding in Victoria Street.
Yeah, I think the results seem to bear out that it's a perception, whether that's noisy trucks, noisy vehicles, or because of the close confines. The perception is that vehicles are speeding. So, yeah. Okay. I've just missed a couple of the comments while we've been talking, so I'm just get my mouse back and go back to the chat. Done that one. Penny supports a reduced speed limit through the village, and to build on Rachel's comment, could 40 km/h extended along Park Street near the school be middle ground? Look, certainly, as I said before, Penny, it's certainly something we can take to Transport. And then Rachel said, could be wrong, but I think a lot of the speeding is attributed to shift change at the mine, so only twice a day, and probably parents racing their kids to the bus. That was something that was certainly raised with us, and I won't say that the mine doesn't contribute to it. It does, and Katie are very, very aware of that. But unfortunately, the advice we've had from New South Wales Police when they've been out to do enforcement is they are finding that a significant proportion of the speeding is by locals. It's not mine traffic. So, which is a real shame. Okay. That's all I've got on the chat. Has anybody else got any other questions? Oh, now I've lost my chat section. No? Okay. What we'll do is the next step in this is that it will be provided to council as a council report. It'll go to the May council meeting to be put on public exhibition, and then we'll go from there. So what I would suggest is that if you've got any other comments and so forth, if you could, once it goes on public exhibition, you provide those to council in writing, via email is fine, and we can, that'll be part of our normal process for anything that we put on public exhibition. We can take those submissions, council then can consider them and decide on whether it wants to incorporate anything further into the strategy. Okay. I'll just put it out there. Any other last questions? Anybody wants to quickly put their hand up? Oh, Rebecca.
Grant, just one question. Was it the May meeting or the April meeting?
The May meeting.
Okay, so you'd be inviting anyone from this, anyone from here tonight, just to get it out and give you some comments before then? Because April, May is another 6 weeks.
Yeah. Actually, we probably could. Let me change that. We'll take it to the April meeting. We may be able to pull that off. Okay. So please keep your eye out for a report in the council business paper for the April meeting.
And we would email and Facebook and let people know anyway, wouldn't we?
Well, yes, it goes via our normal notification through social media and the website, and we put a notice in the paper through the GM conversation section, I think, on anything that's on public exhibition. Rachel, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just to comment with the angle parking in Victoria Street, whether if you're looking at putting seating and things like that, be aware of where the sun's going to be in wintertime. So a lot of our visitors come in wintertime, like they go to the beach in summer and they come inland in wintertime. So you're taking up, you'd be better off putting parking in shade and utilising sunny spaces in winter. Probably same down at the bottom pub as well. They do have outdoor dining in their big garden.
Yeah, thank you. Taken note of that. That'll be certainly something we have to consider at the time when we worked out if and where we put more seating. So I appreciate that. Just to answer Mary's question, yes, public exhibition will be after the April meeting. We'll seek to get a report to council done this week before the council meeting. Helen mentioned the corner store has a toilet. Is there a way of the changeover negotiating something? We can take that on board and see what we can do. As Mark Dicker mentioned, there's some early planning advice being provided to them, and I think we were awaiting something back from them on that if they need anything. And Penny just said thank you. So provide one last opportunity for hands up, chat. No, all good. Thanks, Matt and Nick. Appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Have a lovely evening.